Welcome to another episode of Daniel Goes Outside. I am currently on my way to the Calgary International Airport as I am going to Las Vegas. I'm going to Las Vegas to go to VMware Explore 2024. If you don't know what VMware Explore is, it is an event that VMware puts on about VMware products. In 2022, it was actually renamed away from VMworld to VMware Explore, so you may know it from the other name. I am really excited because I've never been to VMware Explore or any kind of large tech conference. And I've also never been to Las Vegas, so I am extra excited about this trip. What's going to be really interesting is I get to go to VMware Explore and get to just learn more about VMware products. I'm really excited about hopefully learning more about VMware Cloud Foundation, learning a little bit more about NSX, as well as learning about the Avi load balancer or the NSX load balancer. It has like 3 different names. I also get to talk to other people that like to nerd out about VMware stuff, so this should be extra fun. I have just landed in Las Vegas and I got all checked into VMware Explore, and I am also checked into the hotel. I am staying at the Palazzo. I think I'm saying that right, or Palazzo. I'm not actually sure. It's one of the Venetian hotels because VMware Explore is taking place at the Venetian. I had to quickly rush to get checked into VMware Explore because I didn't want to have to wait in the line tomorrow. The hotel is huge. It's like a mall in the hotel, and I kind of got lost trying to find the check-in because it was like, yeah, it's in the Venetian ballroom on level 2. And I was like, okay, let's go to level 2. Well, level 2 is like a whole shopping mall. And I was trying to find it, but then I saw a bunch of people with VMware Explore backpacks, and I just randomly was like, hey, where do I go? And then the guy was like, took me to where I needed to go, and I got checked in with 6 minutes left, which was amazing. So I got all checked in, and now I'm fully checked into the hotel and everything, and this is insane. This is so cool. I can't believe that right now I am standing in Las Vegas and I'm in some fancy hotel. This is insane. And the hotel has a canal in the middle of it. That's crazy. But yes, if you can't tell, I am very excited for VMware Explore. Welcome to my crib for the next couple of days. Here is the washroom. Holy smokes. This thing is huge. Look at this. This is crazy. There's a fancy bathtub, a fancy transparent shower. There's some fancy makeup place. I don't know. There's a phone in the washroom. That's how you know it's fancy, is if there's a phone in the washroom. There's mirrors everywhere. There's a secret door to another door. We're just gonna lock it to keep the sketchy people out. Then here are the beds and a TV that says my name on it. That's really cool. I have never seen that before. Wait, is that live? So the TVs have this animation / live video that plays on the TV that is of the canals that exist, and I was wondering if it was live. But if you watch right here, watch these people. They disappear and they actually reappear right here. They just forever walk the pathway and just disappear and reappear. Oh, this is the VMware Explore backpack I got. Here is my sign-in registration pass thing. Here's a bunch of stickers. Check this out. There's a button. You can go all, and I'm gonna go open. And we look over here. Look at this. You can there's the pools. This is my view. Look at this. And here is, look, there's even stairs. There's a whole couch. I have never been in a hotel room this fancy. I was warned when I checked in that the minibar and all of like the snacks and stuff are on like a weight sensor, and I was like, okay, what happens if I like bump the thing? And he said there was a 10-second timer before you actually get charged. And then my next question was, well, could you like Indiana Jones style it and switch it? And if you do it with the correct weight, could you get away with it? And he's like, no, we check and make sure that like the things are there. So these are the secret things that if I move them, I get charged. And here is, see, there's a whole warning message. And actually, I don't know if these are weight sensitive, but the minibar was warned that it is weight sensitive. So it's not even day one of VMware Explore, and I ended up meeting up with some friends, and we went for drinks at some bar type place called Tao that's in the Venetian somewhere. The Venetian's a giant maze. But anyways, we went there, and a head guy from like Broadcom that does VCF stuff ended up coming out too, and I was able to ask all of the VCF questions that I had, which, well, not all of them, but the main ones that I have, which is like, how do I install VCF? Like, I know how to install vCenter, I know how to install ESXi, but like, how do I install VCF? And I finally have the answer. And the answer is, there is an OVA file that is called like Cloud Builder. You download that, you deploy that, you use that to deploy into an ESXi setup. And with that, you will be able to create your VCF. Once your VCF is created, you have like vSAN, you have vCenter, you have the SDDC, but the SDDC is like Terraform and Ansible, and it's just an automation kind of like engine for everything. But it is like, if it doesn't work, it's fine. Anyways, that pretty much wraps up day 0 of VMware Explore, because like VMware Explore hasn't even really doesn't actually start until tomorrow. So day 0, I've already learned a bunch of things, and this is so much fun. Today is officially day 1 of VMware Explore, and I am going to go meet up with my friend Steven to go for breakfast, and then after that we will head to the event, and I think he's going to do his own thing and I'm going to go do my sessions. But one of my sessions this morning will be the Avi load balancer, and then another one of my sessions is about VMware Cloud Foundation, where even though I've learned a bunch of VMware Cloud Foundation already, there's so much. Like, VMware Cloud Foundation is such a gigantic product, so there's so much to learn, and I don't even think I've scratched the surface. I'm currently on the expo floor. The audio is probably really crappy, but this is Steven, by the way. We have Steven's jank set up so that we can have better audio, so we're gonna record off of that. I'm on the expo floor. This is my friend Steven. I feel like a TikToker holding like the microphone, but I don't make TikToks, so it doesn't count. Anyways, we're in the middle of day 1, and things are kind of winding down, and it's about to become, what is it? The expo, or the welcome? Reception. The what?
Welcome reception.
It's going to be the welcome reception. I don't really know what that is. Do you?
Cocktails.
It's going to be cocktails all over the expo floor, which is where all the vendors are. Right now we're on the hub floor, which is where, like, right behind us is the community floor, or the community booth, and there's like hands-on lab way down there, and I don't know what else is this section. What do you call the hub?
The hub is just pretty much where everything happens, and people meet up. We've got the community center behind us. There's some community sessions that go on in that area. We have the rewards booth. There's hands-on labs. Expo floor is right to our 2 o'clock where all the booths are. So think of it just as the hub of the conference.
So Steven's been here a few times. How many times have you been to VM? Were you here when it was called VMworld?
No, I came the first year after it was renamed to VMware Explore. So I think it's been, this is the 3rd year. And it's a little bit of a different mood, especially with everything that happened with the acquisition with Broadcom. So the mood's a little bit different, but it's still exciting times just with everything going on.
One of the things I did this morning was the hands-on lab for the Avi load balancer. What was really interesting, well, it was my first experience with hands-on lab, and you can tell that like the people running the hands-on lab have done this 600 million times because I went real fast, real quick, and I got a little lost in the beginning, but they were able to help me like get back up to pace, and like it's really cool because the have you played at all with the Avi load balancer?
I do. I actually have a couple customers that have it deployed for their Horizon environments. So
Have you played with Cloudflare, like Cloudflare Access?
haven't touched it.
So the WAF portion of Avi feels very much like Cloudflare Access. The only part that I'm not sure if the Avi load balancer can do, because like you can do more than just the load balancing, where you can do the VIPs, the virtual IPs, to just load balance the things. But you can also do like access control, where you can like deny things, which in my mind seems very similar to Cloudflare Access. But the part that I don't know if it can do is if you could hook in Entra ID to make a user authenticate to an external identity provider before they can hit the application, turning it into like a load balancer, a WAF, and like a reverse proxy. I feel like it can do all of those things. I just don't know if it has the integration with identity providers. Do you know?
I don't.
So these are the things that I still have questions about, but like that session was very informative. Like that was really cool. It went real fast, but like there's so much. The other really interesting session I went today was the one about the vSphere configuration profiles, which is like the host configuration profiles, but like it's actually configured with JSON, and apparently it's easier to it's easier to have differences between your hosts and do different kind of host exclusions, but it's more customizable, and they're gonna eventually deprecate host profiles in favor of vSphere configuration profiles, which is really cool because I've only played with host profiles. Have you played with either?
I think I have some customers that use host profiles, not to the full extent, but they do have them deployed. It helps management, ease of management, and deploying new hosts. So.
My favorite thing, the whole reason why I started using the host profiles was I was configuring stuff for a customer, and I was reinstalling ESXi, and it was in a Blade chassis, and I needed to do it 8 times. So rather than have room for error, I did the settings on one, and then just created a host profile and applied it to each one. But apparently with the configuration profiles, it's going to be even easier, and you could just JSON it, you could like copy paste it, and like it's going to be really cool. I really want to play with that. All right, you know lots about vGPU, right?
I do, tons.
Would you say you're a vGPU expert?
Yes, I would. Part of the
Okay,
NVIDIA NGCA.
give me your credentials.
Yeah.
What are your creds?
Yeah, so I'm part of the NVIDIA NGCA group. So we're supposed to specialize with vGPU-based applications, whether it's virtual desktop infrastructure or moving on to all the new fun stuff with AI, in particular focusing on NVIDIA AI Enterprise.
There's a lot of really interesting AI things, but the limitation that I see is I want to play with AI in my home lab. And yes, I know Johan just did a presentation where I could run it on CPU, but like it's not super fast. And like I have an old 1080 Ti and I have a 4070, but like can I like mesh them into like vGPU, or if I have other video cards that are Quadros, can I like mesh them together and like somehow have just like one massive a gazillion gigabytes of like GPU memory and just toss it into something to use AI?
Yeah. So it's a little bit complicated when we start talking about consumer-based GPUs. When we start talking about the enterprise GPUs, there's NVLink, and it's actually getting a little bit more popular these days because everyone's talking about NV switching now, and that's where the Blackwell processor comes in, and we start talking about bringing together all the video frame buffer so to make it available for applications. However, I don't think that's available on the consumer GPUs. Now, if you do have applications that support it, that can actually attach and map to the different GPUs and the frame buffer memory that's attached to them, you might be able to do something like that if you were running multiple models, like running a model on one GPU and then running another model on the other. But I think you might be a little bit limited with the consumer-based GPUs.
So if I had Quadros, because Quadros aren't consumer.
Right.
So if I had a bunch of Quadros that are like 2 gig Quadros, could I mesh them to make one gigantic GPU to toss into one VM? Or am I limited to only doing one vGPU per Quadro and just chuck all of those into a VM?
Well, so when we start talking about vGPU technology itself is about slicing up the GPUs, a physical GPU into multiple virtual GPUs. So the thing is that like with the some of those Quadro cards, they don't actually support the vGPU technology, so it would be like a 1-to-1. And so that's where some of the limitations are. And then at the same time too, again, it's like you can't link them. So you could do direct pass-through of 2 GPUs to a virtual machine. And then if you had applications, you could disperse those across the 2, but you might be limited to that.
So the last time I did a video card pass-through, I kept running into the like code 43 error.
Yeah.
But I can't remember if it was a Quadro or if it was a consumer grade. Is that still a thing? Has NVIDIA been nice? Like, is code 43 still common?
So to my knowledge, they changed the drivers last year to actually allow the lower end Quadro cards to successfully load their drivers into the virtual machines. So they've overcome that, and I think even with some of the consumer cards, you can do it as well.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. Don't quote me on that though.
One of the sessions Stephen and I both went to was about NVIDIA and doing a bunch of things with AI, and they were really focusing on RAG. And this is my understanding of how it is. Please correct me if I'm wrong. The way that I understand it is if you have your RAG model or your RAG framework, where essentially you have your large language model, and then rather than it just kind of guessing everything, you can have this like database of information known as RAG, and it can like check this. So like if you had a bunch of, like you could feed it all of Microsoft Learn or all of the VMware documentation, and you could use that as your RAG database so that when you ask it a question, rather than just hallucinating or just making stuff up, it would just cross-reference that information. Is that right?
Yeah, so RAG stands for Retrieval Augmented Generation. And so that's where you can use a large language model to essentially augment the responses with data that you put into it. So you can toss in documents, you can toss in data sets, and when you create a query for the LLM, it'll use RAG to essentially find that information inside of the data set that you provide it with. And so you can use the existing knowledge that the LLM has, but in addition to that, you'll have all the documents that you're using RAG with, or the data set that you're using it with. And so you can have it reference contracts, you can have it reference, like we were talking about, ticket information you suggested earlier. And
Yep.
so it's a pretty powerful technology.
It's going to be interesting to see what you can do. And this is why I'm trying to play with it at home, so I can like test and do proof of concept and see how I can make this function. But like, I don't have deep pockets, so I only have my 4070.
Well, day 1 of VMware Explore has come to a close finally, and holy smokes, I have done so many steps. I did 15,720 steps. That's insane. I went to so many different sessions and learned so much. There's so much to do. I learned a ton about VMware Cloud Foundation, more than what I learned yesterday. I have a much better understanding of it, and I still have more VMware Cloud Foundation sessions for, I don't remember which days, but I know I have more sessions for it. And it was really cool to see Johan talk about how you could do AI in a home lab where you don't always need a video card. You could just use your CPU, or you could use like Raspberry Pis, and like it's kind of cool. It will be slower, but like you can do it, so why not? Also, what was interesting was the welcome reception, because that was in the expo hall, which is where all of the vendors were, and it was a few hours long. I don't remember exactly how long it was, but there was a bunch of free food and free drinks and stuff, and it essentially was just like encouraging you to go talk to all of the vendors that are there, which is pretty cool because a bunch of them have a bunch of free stuff if you talk to them, which was pretty neat. One of them, I think, had the best option. They had lightsabers, which is pretty cool. My favorite vendor that I talked to was probably Zabbix, because I kind of knew what Zabbix does, but I was like, hey, what does Zabbix do? Tell me. And I'm like, hey, what's your sales pitch? And they're like, use us or don't. We don't care. If you want to pay for us, you could pay for support, or you don't. It's all open source. There's no different tiers. There's no enterprise version, feature lock things. It's all the same product, which I really like the fact that they're so upfront about it, and they're like, pay for it or don't pay for it. We're not gonna force you to do anything. It's your decision, which I like that they do that. There was also another really cool vendor called CheckMK, which I wanted to call him Check Make, because like I thought MK files are like make files, but like maybe not, but they said they're check MK, which is really cool because it's another thing that's kind of like Zabbix. But the way they explained it is that they could do like a status page thing, which is pretty cool. I'm gonna have to go check that out. Also, it's like all open source too. There was also a party called Underground, which was hosted by LG, ControlUp, and iGel. And what was really interesting with it is that the whole event was very hush hush, and you had to like register on this list, and then eventually they would tell you the location. But it's all like Prohibition era themed, was like all of the emails. And then when you actually got there, there was this bar that is Prohibition themed, where basically you show up, you're on the list, and then you get to go up this elevator. And when you land on the floor, what ends up happening is that like you enter the like lobby area, but like there's nothing there. But there's a painting on the wall that has a door handle, and if you open it, ta-da, there is the bar. And it's all Prohibition themed. It was really, really interesting. Anyways, that brings day 1 of VMware Explore to a close. Today is day 2 of VMware Explore, and the first thing that I have this morning is going to the general session, which is the keynote. After that, I have a bunch of different sessions. One of the sessions I have today is about Kubernetes, which I'm really excited for. And I also have a couple of VMware Cloud Foundation sessions today too. Well, day 2 for VMware Explorer has come to a close. I only ended up doing 12,000 steps today. One of the things I did today was I went to the hands-on lab for vSphere performance testing. And what was really cool is that I learned a bunch of things. It was one of the expert-led ones where it's like the people that built the lab that are telling you about all of it. And what's really funny is they said you wouldn't be able to do the lab in the 90-minute time frame that they gave. Well, guess what? I did the lab in the 90-minute time frame. I may have skimmed a lot, but I got it done. Also, I learned a lot with it, regardless of my skimming. I skimmed kind of over the like basic stuff, but it was really interesting because I learned about commands like vimtop, which is like top, but for vCenter. And I also learned that there's like this performance benchmarking application called DVD Store, which is, it's just like a script on VMware's like GitHub that essentially creates a VM or a database that is a DVD rental place like Blockbuster and creates a bunch of customers. And because of the way that it's built, you're able to just run queries against it and it will just test your VM benchmark, which is really, really cool. Also at the hands-on lab, one of the side combos or side questions that someone asked was about CPU scheduling. And essentially it was, you can't always solve a slow VM problem by just throwing more CPU cores at it, which is something I'm very guilty of doing, because the way that they explained it is if it was a restaurant and let's say you are a party of 8 and well, because you're a party of 8, you're always waiting for a table of 8 people. Just because there's other tables that can seat 2 people or 4 people, you're gonna constantly be waiting. So sometimes giving your VM 8 cores isn't the solution because maybe you have 2 cores and maybe technically it doesn't need it. Now I need to go back and go look at some of the workloads that I have because I'm pretty sure I am doing this wrong in my home lab and I need to fix that because I'm doing it wrong. But I need to read more on it so that I understand it way better. Also today was the Kubernetes 101 session. Oh yeah, and today was also the keynote for VMware Explore, and they announced VMware Cloud Foundation version 9, which is interesting because the current version of VMware Cloud Foundation right now is 5.2. So they just kind of jumped 6, 7, 8 and went straight to 9, but it's because they're doing vSphere 9 and all of those things. They're trying to version number align them. But then what's interesting is with all of VCF version 9, there's Tanzu version 10. They're so close. Today I went to a session that Johan did. He is big in the EUC space and he works at some company called ITQ. He's also a VMware vExpert, and I like legit met him the other day, I think, or today. I don't remember. The days are blurring together now. He did a talk on AI and using RAG and when you use RAG, you have this thing called the vector database, which is essentially all of the information. And he was talking about how he created this thing called Project Einstein, and he was able to make it work with Microsoft Teams. You could use Microsoft Teams to like not just like Microsoft Teams Copilot, but like it's like a person you can message because he created it into a chatbot. So what's really interesting is he, in his Project Einstein, he wasn't able to show Project Einstein because proprietary confidential things, sensitive things, blah, 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 blah. But he was able to show Project Yoda, which is a really cool name because he made the output speak like phrase the sentences like Yoda, which is really, really cool. What he ended up doing is he fed it a bunch of data so that he could ask it questions, and rather than just spitting out information from like an LLM, what it would actually do is it would check that information to it would check whatever your query is against the information that it has. That process is called RAG. I am going to not remember how to say the full name of RAG, but the core is that RAG uses what's called the vector database, and that's essentially what he built. And with that, I didn't know that RAG and like vector databases were like a thing, and now I have so many ideas because like the things you could feed it, like just if you fed a RAG database all of the information from like Microsoft Learn and all of the information about VMware docs. If you fed it all of the information about Microsoft Learn, I wonder if it could finally explain Microsoft licensing. One of the sessions I attended today was about VMware Cloud Foundation deployment, and it finally makes sense. It finally clicks for me. I get it. I haven't done it, but I'm gonna figure out how to do it, because one of the things with deploying VMware Cloud Foundation is that you need to use vSAN and you need to use 4 hosts, and technically there's a way to get around the vSAN requirement by doing it as, I believe they call it an import, where it's using your existing vCenter setup and it will like validate it. I'm not 100% certain on it, but it was heavily hinted at, and I want to know more about it. But regardless, if you did net new, or the other wording of that is called greenfield, I like the word net new more than greenfield, but regardless of net new versus greenfield, essentially the way that you deploy VMware Cloud Foundation is you download this Excel file that you define everything for your VMware Cloud Foundation. Then you configure one ESXi host out of the 4. You configure that to have a management network, and you configure NTP, and DNS must work, so you have to have some way to do that. This is probably easier if you're deploying net new servers, because then you can have your existing DNS running on the old stuff, and then I assume you can just like vMotion or migrate or whatnot, move your domain, or not your domains, but move your VMs across. But that little side detail aside, what essentially you do is once you have that ESXi configured, then what you do is you have your OVA file, which is the VMware Cloud Foundation Builder, and you take that and you deploy the OVA to that ESXi host. Then you can finally launch the VMware Cloud Foundation Builder, and once you're launching that, then you upload I was gonna say XML, but that's wrong. You upload the Excel file. Technically, it can also be a JSON file. But you normally, like, the easy way is you do it with an Excel file. Once you do that and upload it, it validates that the config is all good and starts configuring your ESXi hosts, and it creates a vCenter. And once it has that vCenter created, I lied, it doesn't configure ESXi hosts. Well, it does. You have to have ESXi installed on each of your hosts, but you don't have to do everything. I think you just need the management network, and then you can just import them. But anyways, it deploys vCenter, because VMware Cloud Foundation is just a bunch of different products all grouped together just with a fancy name. Eventually, they're going to probably sell it with one license key for all of these different products. But at the core, the one SKU for VMware Cloud Foundation is for a bunch of different products, one of them being vCenter. It deploys vCenter, then it configures a cluster, then it
adds hosts. I don't remember the exact process, but something along those lines. From there, it configures NSX. Then it deploys SDC DC Manager, or Software Defined Data Center Manager, also known as SDDC Manager. And SDDC Manager, like, the horrible comparison that is not accurate in the slightest is that it's like Terraform kind of thing for the VMware stuff. Because, like, I can see the logic behind it now, finally. And the logic is, okay, humans make mistakes. So VMware wants to make sure that the settings are all correct. So how do you do that? You remove the human element out of it, and you force everyone to migrate to VMware Cloud Foundation. By forcing everyone to migrate to VMware Cloud Foundation, it forces them to define everything in this Excel file, which forces a standardization for the deployment. This makes sense. But it's a lot to wrap your head around because, like, a lot of organizations aren't using NSX, and it's a whole new thing. Like, I've never touched NSX. I do have a session that I'm going to be attending tomorrow or the day after, I don't remember exactly which day, that will tell me more about NSX because I don't know a ton about NSX. But when you finally look at, like, the larger picture and the supportability of it, VMware Cloud Foundation does make sense. Now, this is pricing aside. I have no idea how much any of this stuff costs, but I don't care how much any of this stuff costs because this is just tech stuff and I want to play with it because why not? There was also a communities leader event party. I don't know what to call it. It was at a bar pub thing. There was food, there was a bunch of people, which was really cool because I got to meet a bunch of really cool people. Like, one of the people that writes for Storage Reviews, which is legitimately a website that I have read before to figure out what kind of storage I was looking at, or to dream big about fancy storage that I can never afford. But I've legitimately been to that website and read that, and, like, one of the people that writes for it was there, which is so cool. There was also the guy who runs VM Blog that was there. There was a bunch of other tech bloggers. Like, for context, everyone that was at the event was either a VMUG leader or they were a VIA expert, and one of the ways that people can become a VIA expert is by writing blog posts, so a lot of them were bloggers. But it was just really cool finally putting faces to names and actually, like, seeing the face behind some of these blogs that I've read many, many times, which is really, really cool. Also, I got to meet Corey Romero. I don't remember if I mentioned it previously, but I think I met him the other day, but he was also at the event today. And for those who don't know, he is a big part of the V-Expert community. He is like the V-Expert guy. I'm pretty sure that's his, no, I think his Twitter handle is V-Community Guy or something along those lines. But he is in charge of the entire V-Expert program, which is super awesome to finally meet him in person. There was a bunch of important people from VMUG there, which was really cool to see. It was just all around a fun time, and it was great to nerd out with a bunch of people. There was one of the people, and I am forgetting that person's name, but they were really cool to talk to, and I am bad at names. But regardless, they were the entire person that was in charge of VMware Workstation and VMware Fusion, and was one of the people that advocated to just make it be free, which is really cool. And, like, here's a fun little thing that I learned. What they used to do, and I don't know if this is still true now, but what they used to do is basically use VMware Workstation as, like, a beta test for features they were thinking about deploying in ESXi, and essentially just have it be the little testing ground and see what happens. There was just so much. It was a lot of fun. Day 2 was a lot of fun. Every one of these days is just so much fun. Tomorrow I have a bunch of different sessions. One of the sessions I have tomorrow is about NSX, as well as another session about VMware Cloud Foundation, and those are the couple that I can think of off the top of my head. Oh, wait, and one of them tomorrow is also a session about automating ESXi installations, which is done by William Lamb, whose blog used to be called Virtually Ghetto, who I have read that blog many times. So that will be really interesting. And like, if you can automate an ESXi install, you could automate deploying VCF even more. I wonder how much more you could automate it. Today is day 3 of VMware Explore, and today I have a bunch of sessions that I'm going to go to. Some of them are about NSX and more about VMware Cloud Foundation. Some of the things that I learned today on day 3 of VMware Explore is that NSX is is pretty complicated, and there is a lot to take in and a lot to learn. One of the things that is really interesting with NSX is that because it basically virtualizes your entire network, it does like an overlay network where you can like tunnel your traffic from one network. Like if you had one different network in one server rack and then you had a different server rack with a different IP range, you could essentially move a VM between the two. And because of NSX and how it's doing its tunneling, and I believe it's using overlay technology to do that, it is able to just like vMotion that VM into the other server rack. And even though none of the VLANs are in that other server rack, NSX is able to take care of all of that and make everything work. One of the confusions that I always had with NSX is that like, how can I do all of the things? I believe it's a component of NSX, or it is just an additional part of NSX. It's confusing, but it is called vDefend. vDefend has had a bunch of different names. I do not know what they are off the top of my head, but I know that there's a bunch of different names. With vDefend, it is basically a firewall, like your Palo Alto firewall, your Fortinet firewall. It is essentially that, but with vDefend, it is a replacement for that. But what's really interesting is like in my setup in my home lab, I am running a virtual Palo Alto, and my traffic has to go from my VM sometimes to the switch, then from the switch back down, and then it hits my Palo, and then from there it hits the rule. Well, if you're deploying NSX with vDefend, you are able to not need to do that, because NSX with like vDefend is able to be integrated right on the ESXi host. So if your traffic needs to route, it doesn't actually need to fully leave and like hit your hairpin rules and stuff like that, which is really, really cool. Also, I was always curious if it would be able to do like app ID, user ID, SSL inspection, and all of that is possible. I believe it's an add-on and they call it NAPP. I tried to Google to figure out what that stood for, but I just found documentation about NAPP, but nothing about what it actually stands for. But if you deploy vDefend with that, it is essentially a replacement for your normal firewalls that you would normally use. The part that still is an unknown variable that I don't fully understand yet is like how you would connect your like workstation computers, like physical computers, like end user computers, not like VDIs, but like normal end user computers. How do you hook that in if you have like virtualized your entire network? Also today, William Lamb did a session about how to automate ESXi installations, and holy smokes, there's this thing called ESXi Kickstart, which like you can literally config everything and put this like Kickstart file right onto the USB, and you can plug it into a host and the host will boot up. But guess what? You can take it even further. You could like HTTPS boot these things. You could PXE boot them, but PXE boot only supports BIOS mode, but UEFI mode is supported on HTTP and HTTPS boot, which is really good because then you can take advantage of secure boot. But I'm not sure what happens if you try to do secure boot and you're trying to boot off of like an HTTPS web server to do your ESXi install. But regardless of that little tangent that I need to figure out, you can just basically define this Kickstart script, and it's not really a Kickstart script. You can define this Kickstart config file, and when it's defined, you can basically have it hard-coded to all of the parameters that you want. And if you have it built that way, you literally could just plug in a USB and it will just grab and do all its config and just boot up to ESXi, and then you're done, which is really cool. But what else you can do is you can script it so that you can make it go in and you can essentially tell it to go get a different config file. Let's pretend it's a CSV. You can go get a CSV of like your host names, of all of your things, to like load that information and like parse it and inject it into your config and just configure everything just automatically you just plug in the USB, the ISO, whatever, however you're installing ESXi, but it will just have all of its config and it will just magically configure. And this is what's even crazier, because I hadn't even thought of this, and this is amazing, is you could make ESXi deploy vCenter, deploy a VM, deploy a bunch of things out of the box. So one of the scenarios that William Lamb was talking about was you could just basically have an ESXi USB stick that you plug into a server that is a zero-touch config that would just do everything you need to do to deploy VCF, which is crazy. Also today I was walking around in the area called the Hub, which is essentially where the communities of VMware kind of live. And like there is the VMware community, which is like the vExpert area. There is also the Tanzu Vanguard, which is the Tanzui people. I think there's also the Code people that like VMware Code. And then there's I want to call it a community theater, but I'm not sure what it is, but there's one for Code and there's one for the community. And essentially anyone that is doing a presentation there, they are, rather than doing like the normal 45-minute presentation, they're doing like a 25-minute presentation, and some of the presentations are really cool. And in that area, I was just walking around and someone's like, hey, you want to go see the hands-on lab tour? And I was like, what? Yes. The hands-on lab tour was really cool to see. It was interesting to see all of the components that are like tying everything together. But what I really would have loved to have seen would have been like the actual switches that are networking everything together. Like that part would have been fascinating for me. Maybe it's not fascinating for everyone, but like for me, that would have been really cool to do, because I'm pretty sure that the workstations that people use for the hands-on lab, either the expert-led ones or the self-paced ones, I am pretty sure those systems are just pixie booting into a Linux VM that auto launches a specific URL so that you can just log in and then get access to the labs that are there, which is really cool. But like, I wanted to see the infrastructure that made that work. They were able to show some dashboards and stuff like that. While walking around the hub area, I walked past the VMware communities section, and they were doing this thing where if you tweet a certain tweet using specific hashtags, then you can get a thing. And I got a thing. I got this fancy Lego kit, which is really, really cool. It's a McLaren race car thing. But what's interesting is that it says VMware on the back, which I asked someone the other day. I was like, why is VMware McLaren, like, why are those things? Apparently VMware sponsors the McLaren race car team or whatnot, which is really cool. I did not know that, but that's why there's so much like McLaren and VMware stuff. Well, day 3 of VMware Explore is now completed, and today I did 9,000 steps, and I learned so much today. My brain is like overloaded with information. There is just so much that I have learned, and there is so much that I still need to learn. And at the end of today, I ended up going with some friends to a steakhouse and had some really awesome steaks and had some great conversations. And that pretty much wraps up my day 3 of VMware Explore. Today is day 4 of VMware Explore. It is the final day of VMware Explore, and what I have on the agenda for today is that I'm going to a hands-on lab about NSX. Today on day 4 of VMware Explore, which is the final day of VMware Explore, it is a shorter day because it is the final day. And on day 4, what I ended up doing is I went to a hands-on lab, an expert-led hands-on lab about NSX, and I think NSX is starting to finally make sense in my mind, but I do feel that I need to learn a little bit more about BGP before I dive too deep into NSX, because it seems to leverage a lot of things with BGP. The other thing that finally seems to have clicked for me is your tier 1 and your tier 0 gateways, routers. I'm not sure what the proper name is, but it makes sense because now essentially you could just have all of your VM traffic going to tier 1, and when it's going into tier 1, it is able to just route itself without actually having to leave, sometimes without even having to leave the host. It can just figure out where it needs to go without having to hit like hairpin rules and stuff like that, which in theory, I'm assuming, but in theory, I believe that will result in faster networking. And your tier 0 sounds like it is like the connection to the physical world. And So you can have your tier 1 gateway router, and then you can feed it information about the tier 0, and then the tier 0 could just route outside of the NSX environment to the physical world. That's at least my interpretation of it. But that lab was very, very useful. I really enjoyed that one. So because there is basically more than half a day of time left in Vegas, I needed to kill some time because what else am I gonna do? So my friend Steven and I, we decided to go outside and go see the Vegas Sphere. And holy smokes, the Sphere is huge. I thought it was going to be a bunch of like LED LCD panels, but like when you get really close up to it, it's like a bunch of like LED lights, and like you can see through them, which is really interesting because from afar you can't see through them. But like I never thought they would be just gigantic like LED lights placed in like an array, which is, it's really, really cool. Like that was out of all the things, when Steven was like, what do you want to see in Vegas? I'm like, I don't know. I want to see the Sphere. I want to see the like tech thing that's in Vegas. Cause like, what else is there other than, I don't know. But I saw the Sphere, and that was the thing I wanted to see because it's powered by a like, not a bajillion, but it's powered by a couple thousand NVIDIA GPUs, and like, it's like a fascinating newest marvel of technology. But it's also really interesting because everyone's like talking about the Vegas Sphere as if it's like this brand new thing, because like on the inside you can like do concerts and you can like watch movies on the spherical display on the inside, but also outside it is displaying images. But people are like talking as if that's brand new stuff, whereas like in BC, in like Vancouver, they have Science World, and Science World is a dome that you can go in and you can watch movies on the Sphere that is in Vancouver. Now, yes, outside of the Sphere, you can't watch any movies, or like there's no video on the outside. It's only on the inside. But like playing movies on a Sphere is not a new thing. I don't know if they can actually have concerts. I'm pretty sure the one in Vegas is way bigger, but like it's still like, this isn't super new. It's new to Vegas, and the external display is new for sure, but it's not new to the world. But it's also really, really cool. Like it is definitely modern because the one in Vancouver is really, really old and has existed for many, many years. Because I remember going to see it in the theater there when I was a kid, and like it still exists. Well, today is the day after VMware Explore, and it is a travel day for me as I am traveling back to Calgary, Alberta. I have just gotten off of my flight from Las Vegas to Calgary, and the entire flight was awesome. Well, like, I don't think I've ever been on a flight that wasn't like a good flight, but like the people that I was sitting beside were two very nice ladies, and they actually informed me that the seat I was sitting in was eligible for a free alcoholic beverage, which I was like, what? I've never drank on a plane before. So I ended up getting a bottle, well, like an airplane size bottle of 200 milliliters of white wine to drink on the plane. And I've never drank on a plane before. And it was great because it was free. Nothing tastes better than free anything. So that was really cool. And they were very nice, and they gave me like free cookies. All in all, VMware Explore was a phenomenal experience. I had so much fun. It was so great talking to other V experts and other Omnissa tech insiders that happened to be there. And it was great to put like faces to names that I've only spoken to online, which was really, really great. I had so much fun. Also, the amount of information that I learned, like my brain is still kind of mush from all of the information I consumed over like the last 4 days, but like I wouldn't change anything about it because it was so great. There's still so much to learn, and I am really excited about that because I have only just scratched the surface of VCF and NSX, and I really do want to learn Kubernetes. There's just so much.
and I am so excited to learn more. I am so grateful for being able to go to VMware Explore 2024. I do hope that I do have an opportunity to go to VMware Explore 2025. That would be amazing. But I am happy that I was able to go in 2024. I am so content that I was able to go and just have an amazing time. I honestly cannot recommend it enough. So much fun. In the comments below, let me know, have you ever been to a tech conference before, like VMware Explore or any other tech conference? Also, there will be an accompanying blog post to this video on my blog, theDXT.ca. The blog post will go a little bit more into detail than what I did cover in this video. Feel free to check that out. It will be linked in the description below. That essentially sums up this video. Thank you for watching. I will see you next time. Don't forget to have an epically awesome day. Bye.